Good evening, everyone. It's Monday, January 30th, and thank you all for coming to the working group for budget season. Kate's going to kick it off.
Okay, so you've had some time to look around, and I look forward to discussing the budget and answering your questions, but before you start.
Quick thing, do we need to call this to or just pledge allegiance, or is this a
Do we do
regular
anything,
meeting?
Kate?
Well, I already wrote down we were starting at 5:35, so.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, please go ahead.
So the first thing, attached to each proposal is a department commentary file and some additional supporting documentation provided by the department in a position request form if there are any new positions. If some departments may not have submitted complete department commentary, so we'll attach them and update the files once the information is received in the departments. I worked hard to bring the expenses down as much as I reasonably could, but there's some really big numbers here. One significant item I want to call your attention to is the operating transfers out. I'm proposing a change in the way we fund the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures, or the capital fund. We currently deposit all the taxes in the general fund, and then we fund the capital fund with an operating transfer from the general fund to the capital fund. Connecticut General Statute 7-361 says that we can levy taxes up to 4 mills directly for the benefit of the reserve fund for capital. So I'm proposing that we move to that method of funding beginning with fiscal '24. That would allow for more accurate year-over-year comparisons of the general fund. It wouldn't fluctuate based on the amount of capital projects approved or the financing sources utilized for the capital projects. That change does result in an artificial decrease in the general fund this year. So when I talk about year-over-year comparisons, I'm taking that into account. Also, on a policy issue with the capital fund requests, with the exception of the annual paving program, I took out any projects that cost $1 million or more because I believe projects of that size should be addressed independent of the budget. Jen and I have had some discussions regarding a policy around such issues with the capital fund, and after the budget is complete this year, we'll have further discussions and come up with a proposed policy. So in working on the operating budget, I'm not kidding you, I often went back line by line looking for reductions or ways to lower the increase. Sometimes the cuts were ridiculously small, but what I was looking for were cases where we budgeted more than we needed historically, or some of these just-in-case budgets, and tried to eliminate as much of that as possible. I did this all recognizing that we were facing increasing demands on the town, being asked or required to provide new or expanded services, and that some areas that had contracted during the height of the pandemic were now returning to previous levels. So there's a lot of ways to break down the increases and plenty of ways to analyze and compare. So I want to focus for a moment on what I can control. And for that purpose, I want to look at the budgets, the departments who appear in our budget numerically, not alphabetically, above the library. That's where I can exercise some control. If we focus on those lines, the budget is almost 5%. And that was a really hard decision for me to move forward with that as a proposal. Included in there is an increase of almost 11% for employee benefits. If I take employee benefits and risk management out of the picture, recognizing that my control over those I have control, but it's minimal, the increase is up 3.4%. I could live with that a little better, but I feel like it's still a lot. So what's driving it? 3 new full-time positions budgeted to start July 1, 2 new police officers, and a full-time emergency management director. 2 new part-time positions budgeted to convert to full-time on January 1, which is 1 registered sanitarian and 1 deputy fire marshal. A new part-time position budgeted to start July 1 in the finance department. The premium increase for medical insurance is currently estimated at 20%. So we'll talk about that a little later when we get to that budget. The salary contingency contains funding for settlement of 2 union contracts. The value of the police increases will be moved now that the contract has been signed, and we have the DPW contract expiring June 30th of this year. The value of accrued leave redemption is up. We are anticipating a significant retirement payout. And it also includes the first year of the police sick to 457 contribution plan. There are significant rate increases anticipated in utilities. And as I said before, we've got many programs or functions returning to pre-COVID levels. And then there are increases in debt service. The debt service budget assumes issuance of bonds for the purchase of Great Island, and it assumes issuance of the first series of bonds for the HHR projects. So the positive news, revenues, investment income is up significantly. Planning and zoning is increasing their fees. Youth services is increasing their revenues. Parking revenues are beginning to return to pre-COVID levels, and when we talk about the parking budget, some of the assumptions in there do include an increase in fees. We have not increased the rates since before the pandemic. We would have looked at it in fiscal 20, but there wasn't many people parking. So, and then looking at the new grand list and using the fiscal 23 mill rate, tax revenue would be expected to increase by over $2 million. So, my annual reminders for Sarah, who's this is like your fourth or fifth budget now. You've heard them many times.
Yeah.
The budget is a plan to meet the goals and objectives of the Board of Selectmen. It's not just a budget. It's a plan for the services we'll provide and how we deliver them. The decisions you make are not always just monetary, they might be policy decisions. And you may find a need to decide between competing priorities. Particular to this year, the budget addresses changes in the town and the state. The town has been experiencing growth over the last few years, and this budget responds to that growth, as did last year's and as must next year's. And when I say next, I mean the fiscal 25, we will still be addressing that. The state has implemented laws that we must respond to, and I see, I'm referring in particular to the police department, some of the choices there being growth in personnel or a reduction in services. And then just a couple process thoughts. I do have the list of cuts I made, and I may refer to them at times, but I think you should focus on what is in the budget. And, I've told you all about the good news on the revenues. In preparing the budget, I made decisions to keep the spending increases down, and I don't feel that just because we have more to spend means that we should. So I look at it from what should we be spending, not like, oh, well, $2 million more, let's go. It's all okay. So that's mine. And Jen, I think you might want to run through some of the just mechanics of moving around OpenGov.
Yep.
Because some of you have your devices out.
Just a couple of tips, because one common complaint that we get is you can't see everything on this one screen, or you have to scroll very far to the right. So I just wanted to give you a couple of quick ways of making it a little more manageable. If you go into either an expense or revenue worksheet, first thing that I love is this manage columns, and in there you can turn on or off any column, and that's a good way. If there are things showing that you have no interest in, you can just uncheck them and the column will disappear from your screen. And then the other item that I like are these carrots up here. So I like having all the reference years so I can see what the historical was, but I don't necessarily need it expanded all the time because it takes up a lot of screen space. So you can just collapse that. And likewise, if you don't want to see the dollar or percent change, you can always collapse that, and it really compresses your screen. And then the only other recommendation that I had, and this was a not so good choice, but you can drag and drop columns. So if you prefer to see the description right next to the amount, you can just drag that over. Unfortunately, when you go into every other proposal, it doesn't necessarily retain those changes, but if you come up with a view that you like, you'll get used to being able to just easily click things on or off to make it more manageable.
That's all I have.
Okay. So if we're ready to dive in.
Hey, Kate, one
Yeah.
question going back. So it was 3.4 without benefits and pension?
Right.
The increase,
Right.
3.4? And 5% with that?
Yep. So if we start in the Board of Selectmen budget, there's not a whole lot new, but I do want to call your attention to professional services. I put in an additional $10,000 in this budget this year. One of the things we've learned in past years that we often have the need for professional services come up, and we didn't have any money to address it. So there's nothing in particular planned for that, but we'd like the First Selectman to have the ability, when necessary, to go out and hire a consultant of some sort without having to go to the Board of Selectmen, or Board of Finance rather, to get a transfer, to be able to move quickly to do that. Go for my cheat sheets. Didn't bring all the cheat sheets, so I thought I did. Okay. Other than that, let's see. Part-time salary reflects that it looks like it's up a lot, but that is the current staffing. We did hire a part-time media relations manager last year, so that reflects the wage for that. We've reduced in some areas where we weren't using them as frequently. So there's nothing terribly remarkable in that, yeah.
The only comment I would make is, I think they've changed the name of the safety campaign, and you may want to have it reflect the new name. They did change it, Mike, was it Slow Down Around Town? They did change the name.
That was
Didn't
it.
know if you wanted to have it reflect the most recent name.
Well, you know what, they might change it again.
You're absolutely
So,
right.
We'll keep an eye on that.
23 might have a new name.
Right.
Well, and that's also, something that you all have to decide if you want to continue doing that.
Right.
Okay.
Kate, that is the full amount, or that is the cost share with the police?
There is no longer a cost share with police. So that's part of the, discussion I think that has to be had.
Right.
And I think we were taken aback by some of the expenses last year, so I think we need to have a discussion about whether or not we're doing it, at what level we want to do it.
Right, I think that, just in general, it did, it had a few little bumps. I was gonna say speed bumps, but that would be. Yeah, it had a few hiccups there.
Yeah.
So how much did the police department funded it from?
They had funded it from the false alarm fund, but
False
that
alarm.
was all done in the prior year.
Right.
So this year was what the town paid, but there were some expenses related to the 2022 season that came from last year.
Okay. I mean, some of this is, kind of sunk costs, right? We have the signs and banners and all of that, so.
Right, this was, there was still some cost for materials, but it was more advertising fees for the ads on Facebook and for the company, the advertising company that assisted the town with the project.
Okay. Okay, so is this the point where we make a decision on if we want to do this program, or can we keep it in the budget?
We can keep it in the budget, and you can decide if you want to do it or at a lesser level.
Okay, let's do that. I think we should discuss this, right?
Okay.
Sarah, you probably have some thoughts on this.
Mike was on it last year, too.
Yeah.
I see it as a worthy thing for us to be involved in, although I just, at this expense, I think there's a way to still support it, but not necessarily at that dollar level. I mean, the signs were brilliant in their own way, but I don't, it's hard to measure the effectiveness, of that and of those, tax dollars going to the, signs around town.
Yeah. And we have the signs.
Right.
Right, we collect them. I mean, I see a couple are still out, but we have them, so. Okay, so maybe we have another discussion on how we go forward on that. Okay. I have a really small one, Kate. On Muni Code, I saw somewhere in the contract that if we signed in 2022, we got a 20% discount. Is that included in that price?
We already benefited from that.
We did, okay.
Okay. I'm going to go to my budget. Okay, so there are not a lot of significant changes. Did reduce the publications that I purchased, the budget for that, because I wasn't using it. And that's pretty much it.
Okay.
The copier comment?
That's, okay, so that's in the other section.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Sorry.
Oh, not too.
All right, so in this section of the budget, we've got the parking, a portion of the parking administrator's wages, the TV 79, reduced professional services, that was reduction for parking ticket processing, because we changed the way that we manage that. The copiers, this was based on our existing contract. So that's where you see an increase. We're going to run over this year. And then I reduced office supplies simply based on we're not spending it.
Why wouldn't the copier lease be flat, or does it have an escalator built in? Or is it
No, I
usage
think the
driven?
budget was short this year.
Okay.
But there can be occasionally overage charges if we use more than we than we're allotted. Okay, we're good. I'll go on to human resources. So, full-time salary, it's down because we had our former director had retired and the new director came in at a lower salary. Conferences and meetings down a little bit, but dues and professional licenses is up, belonging to some different organizations. SHRM, which is a human resource management organization, the National Public Employee Labor Relations Association. So a little increase there. Professional services is up. We are doing more background checks. And the note I have of that was, we're doing them on all hires, and most, it's basic for most people, but in the past we only did them on specific hires, and we're now doing them on everyone. We pay an outside service to do that. And other than that, the budget is remaining the same. Good? Okay. Next up is the finance department. So here we have something, one of our first things is seeing what some of the progress is costing us. With moving so many services online and using credit card fees, or credit cards, allowing people to charge it, actually processing all the credit card revenues falls in the finance department, dealing with the bank reconciliations, reconciling the revenues to the various departments, and has made their job more complex. And as such, Jen has asked for a part-time clerk to help them reorganize how the work is done so that our existing full-time skilled staff can do the higher level things and focus on things like the amount of time it takes to do their bank reconciliations now, so that we'll have a clerk do some of the lower data entry filing type tasks.
Is this just allocation of those expenses to the various departments because they're all consolidated here? Or what type of work?
No, this is
would
the
be?
work that they have to do now because so many departments take credit cards. It's made the finance department's workload heavier.
So the decision was to continue to account for it the way you have and get some additional help to sort through that as opposed to splitting up the cost and letting each department manage those separately? Or,
I don't think
we've
we
talked
want
about
the
that
additional,
before.
we don't want them, so this is like, would you like to explain it? If I'm not doing a good job.
So the cost for the clerk is about $15,000, and if we were to allocate it to those that are taking credit card revenue, it would be constantly shifting because new departments are bringing revenue, or as they ramp up and they have more transactions. So we don't really have a solid way of allocating that expense.
We also don't allocate
Positions
like that generally.
Okay. And are the costs that you're talking about, are these just sort of the 3% add-on?
No, that's the credit card fees that we do allocate to the departments that are accepting the credit cards. This is, we need another 15 hours a week in finance to do the reconciliations because they're more complex now. It's not just a check coming in the door that goes to the bank as a regular deposit.
Right.
It's matching up their system to the bank and timing, and it's just,
Okay.
the online permitting takes us about 10 hours a month to reconcile.
And there's not a way to simplify any of our payments that we could get away from some of this complexity?
At the moment, no, nothing immediate. And what it's causing is a backlog in other accounting work. So it's pushing us to be delayed in other posting, which then results in less timely financial reporting, which is one of my concerns.
Do you think that there might be an opportunity as we move forward to, I don't know, ramp up our training or find a way to get to a point where we don't need the halftime
I think
person?
The problem is some of the pieces of software that we use, they're very easy. They provide excellent reporting on the revenue that has come in, whether it was from credit card or checking, and it's very easy to match them up. Some others are more difficult. And we're a little bit at the mercy of the software companies because they've helped create these silos where we don't have a choice who we use as a processor. And so we're stuck with the processor that they want. And to actually take, like, we had a deposit of $10,000 to the bank today and identify which revenue account it belongs to from the online permitting is not a simple task. And so I think if that ever changes, then we might be able to do something. But it's where we are now.
And I think the approach that we've taken with the department softwares is to have them decide what is best for their operations as well as best for their customers. So while it may be really great on that side of it, the back-end financials aren't always a focus of those softwares. And so they can be very time consuming to make sure that we receive the revenue that we're expecting to receive, and that there's nothing outstanding between their system and what's hit the bank.
I actually think it's gonna get worse for you. I think it's gonna have more time, more complexity, the more departments that take payments. You're not gonna know which resident paid what tax or a car for $250. You don't know. It's gonna take more time, I have a
And the
feeling.
only
Right.
way you can do it is by person, by transaction, carefully
Unfortunately.
account for all of that.
Exactly.
You're right about that.
Just to make sure that we've received everything we're supposed to.
Right.
Now, I think you need to do this, I agree.
Jen, the credit card fee, that goes all to the company.
To the
right?
processors, yeah.
There's no sharing of that?
No.
So even though we're incurring, in this case, additional costs, we're not?
Right, and in some instances, we have shifted to, like on the health department, they are charging a percentage fee to cover the credit card fee, but we're not then covering any of the additional expense.
We don't pass any of it through? I thought we passed.
Yeah, we do,
percentage.
but, yeah, so we do, depending on which, like,
Right.
the tax ones
Right.
get passed through, but
Right.
what this is about is, okay, now the health department has they've
Right.
sold this many permits,
Right.
and where does that revenue, where does it need to be
Right.
allocated to? And it's not as simple as, when we used to have a cash transmittal, and they brought up a pile of checks and a pile of, and we
Right.
just, 10 minutes you count it, and there you go.
Or a check from so-and-so resident.
Yeah.
So on this, how often do you reconcile?
On the building permits, we're doing monthly, so on most of them, we do monthly because the cutoff times make it very difficult to do it more often than that. So right now, we have 5 additional monthly reconciliations that we're doing. And then during parking season and dump permits, those months, we have 2 more in addition to that we're doing monthly. And that actually was before the health department went live, so that's another one. So, and as more and more come in electronically, that's just gonna grow.
Do we have space for this person?
We do, we have the spare desk in the middle for 15 hours because we use that for preparing the bank deposit anyway, and that's verifying the cash receipts is one thing that I envision this position doing, as well as some AP, basic AP work. So them being in the middle of the office should be no problem.
This is for the next fiscal year. Do you need to move this up and get this higher in sooner than that?
No, I don't think we'd be ready to take them on
Okay.
any sooner than that. I don't think we'd have the time to get them up to speed and really dedicate to it. But if we can plan for July 1st, I think we'll be in a good position.
Okay.
Any other questions on this one?
Other than that, office supplies is up a tad, and that's just a function of the stuff we use, the forms, the check stock, just in general, the office supplies have ticked up a bit. While we're here, we talked about the telecom audit at the last meeting, so that will be saving us money, thank them for that. The next line item, there's the treasurer. It's, when I said I went through, made some really small cuts. This budget has only got the treasurer's salary and $40 for office supplies, and she hadn't spent that $40 in a number of years, so I cut it.
Brutal. Love it.
I'm like, okay, well,
And we cover Joan's office supplies when she needs them out of my budget. So we're not going to make her go without.
no, we'll get her the money, but
Kate, just to be clear, where is the forecasted budget for the investment income that the treasurer manages?
that, actually, let's go back. It's in the finance department.
That's the 71,000 under revenue?
Yes, it was 71,000.
It was 71,000, now it's over $1 million.
Okay, that's good. That's going in the right direction, because it's been around that for,
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a little scary to me because I remember the years when we budgeted that much and then
It didn't come in.
it didn't come in.
And we're heading into possible recession. I understand that, just, it's been where she hits goal, you know, like,
Yeah.
2 months in and.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, this year, I think the 71 was even something that the Board of Finance had increased over what Joan had originally estimated, and you look at, you know, we're at 500,000 already, so.
Is this strict forecast strictly a function of higher interest rates, or is it any kind of different investment strategy with all that? I know her hands are tied on.
Her hands are pretty
risk.
tight on what she can do,
Of
but
course.
she has gotten into some treasuries. But it's just mostly a function of the interest rate
Okay.
improvement.
And she did provide a write-up, if you're in the finance department, and proposal details, this investment income detail. Joan wrote quite a bit on how she developed that forecast.
Jen, is there a max on stiff? 30% she has, is that the max?
I don't think there's a legal max, that's the
I
most
know
that she feels comfortable
Where she
with.
is?
Yeah, we could put everything there.
We
But
could,
we
okay.
could, yeah, but, you
For
know,
concentration.
concentration risk, you don't want to do that.
Right.
Well, she's never been a fan of stiff in any case, so.
That's correct.
I understand.
There is a small budget for the Board of Finance, that is the audit. And what you see in this budget is, the audit cost is net of the Board of Education share. Might surprise you that we actually are the bigger side, the bigger portion of the cost for the audit, but
Hey, Jen, can we go back to the treasurer for a second? So in her report, I looked at it, and it, you know, she addresses rates and the securities, but she doesn't really talk about duration. Is she thinking the same kind of duration for these investments?
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, she doesn't like to go out too far.
Right.
But the duration is all, doesn't she match that against expenditure timing to some extent, or?
To some extent, we do have a discussion about what our cash flow needs are for operations.
Yeah, but a lot of the things, well, the CDs and treasuries, but we also, like stiff, you can come in and out, you know, and some of the money market funds, you're only limited in how many times you can go in and out.
But it's perfectly liquid, you can get
Yes,
access to
right,
that
yes.
money. Okay.
Yeah. Assessor.
Wait, do we want to go for Board of Finance, or was there anything?
It's just
This
the
is
audit.
the-
Okay, so
There's not much you can do with that.
And when you renewed the auditor for those guys, you kept the same firm but changed partners, or what was that?
We did an RFP in 2020, so it was a new partner at that time, same firm, new partner. They've since been acquired by a larger firm.
Excuse me.
We're at the end of 3 years, so the Board of Finance will have a discussion about doing another RFP versus continuing on with CLA and any desire
You're still
for a
happy
partner
with those
change.
guys?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they were only our only response to the 2020 RFP.
Yeah, they do a very good job.
Yeah,
they do.
There aren't that many firms that do
Municipal
municipal
audits.
audits. I think there's only 4 in the state, so it limits your options, and not all of them want to make the trek down here. The Assessors Office, there's not a lot of change here. We have moved in some instances, you might see like money coming out of one line going into another. I believe this is one where we took money, it had been budgeted in training before, but it truly belonged in dues and licenses, so we moved them. You might see that in, you know, in some places, to start doing better accounting. Slight uptick in software maintenance and support, that is their share of the Tyler, which is, I'm sorry, Tyler's all theirs, that's the appraisal software. And then there's the Walsh, which is the tax billing software. That cost is split between the tax collector's office, the assessor, and the sewer fund. So the big increase here, I mean, $600, but percentage-wise, it seems like a lot. It's the cost for the motor vehicle pricing books. This J.D. Power, they took over Kelly Blue Book, and the prices have just skyrocketed. So, but that is how they price the motor vehicles, so we need to do it. Uniforms, this is one of those where it was a just-in-case account. We do have union members in that office, and under their contract, if they are the type of people who go out and do inspections or site visits, things like that, and they ruin their clothing in the course of doing business, we have to, reimburse up to a certain level. So we've had some money in there for that. We've never used it, so I said, cut it. There are, I think, a couple revenues associated with them, but this is state grants. Their formulas.
Yeah, Kate, what's the disabled, what is that?
Disabled persons, that's,
Yeah,
sometimes there's a payment in lieu of taxes, where if we grant an exemption to individuals, the state reimburses us based on formula. It's
Okay.
usually not one for one,
okay,
but I don't think we budget it because it's usually so low.
right. There was
The bigger one there is the pilot on state-owned land.
Right. And we got the 3% increase just from the state, they just,
That's from their 22-23 biennial budget, so we should get an update on that in the coming months.
okay.
But that's the best number that we have available right now.
And we'll move to the tax collector. So again, there's not a lot of big changes in this budget. We're not seeing, reducing some in the seasonal and temporary, and over time, those are just, you never really know. What you're seeing here, the movement between travel and conferences, one of the employees there was traveling to take classes for the tax collector certification. She has successfully passed that, and in a couple months, when she has her 3 years of experience in, she'll be certified. But now she will be attending conferences, so you'll see the change in the monies moving from travel to conferences. Printing, that's just price increases. This is rate books, bills. We need to keep printing those. And I think that's the only stuff now. If you want to take a look at the revenues, they're going to be up.
Wait, Kate, so on the printing costs, those are just, are we printing more or have costs
No,
actually
costs
gone
going up.
They've actually gone up 14%.
Yeah. And just so you don't get thrown, we don't post in the revenues, we don't put the Board of Ed side, so you see last year the full 100 million, and this is only, what we would need. Prior tax collections, we're assuming those are gonna go down a bit. And we should know soon, Kathy has commented that the collections seem to be soft. So we'll see at the end of this month where we finished up with the second round of collecting. So, the supplemental motor vehicle is up because the values of the cars have been going up. So we estimate those going up. Supplemental real estate, we're reducing that estimate because we don't expect to have a lot this year as a supplemental.
So for the 100,000 for the cars, that's just the value, that's not volume, that's just the value?
That's an estimate, and what we've been seeing is the values have been going up, so, yeah.
Is there a breakdown on residential and commercial under property taxes there?
Yeah. That's just the gross levy.
Okay.
I don't think we could break it, we have the grand list breakdown. With the current grand list, what it's showing, the 1.5% growth, where that's coming from. So we could break it down further if you want. Legal counsel. So, slight increase in what we're estimating for general legal counsel, but slight decreases in labor counsel and regulatory counsel. We felt that, didn't think we were going to use the labor counsel as much as we had. That is always a bit of a crapshoot. And then Jeremy prepares the regulatory counsel budget based on his knowledge of what he has out there and what he anticipates might go to court. What I would say is next year, in the fiscal '25 budget, I think we'll look at a bigger number for general legal counsel because reval years always have the highest level of appeals in the first year.
And are those legal services are these just payments to third-party law firms exclusive of, say, settlement costs and all that, or is that all baked into this?
If there was a settlement, it might be baked into that, yes.
Okay.
But trying to think when we have had a settlement that we had to pay out of legal costs. Because a lot of them are insured.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's no, we had done a rate increase for council
That's already,
last year and going into this year, but it's not going up again.
This did not
year.
anticipate another increase. It was just
Okay.
based on volume of cases.
Gotcha.
That was a 2-year contract.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Probate court, not a big budget. It's our share of the expenses. We bill New Canaan for their share, so this is a net number. There's just not a lot there. IT, we got some new things in IT. Okay, pull up my notes. IT is not moving. Okay, so, in the, let's see, professional services, we did provide some funding for consultants and other professional services to implement the recommendations of the IT steering committee, because we think some of the things that are coming out of it will need that. Another new item. Oops. In software support, is that where we put the security thing?
No, training services.
Okay, training services. Thank you. Okay, training services, $5,000. This is for a piece of software called where is it? Know Before Security. It's training software that was recommended as part of the IT study. This is to train people to avoid being hacked, to avoid clicking on the wrong thing, so that all employees will be required to take this. So IT had done a survey with other towns, and this was one they found was good and a lot of towns use it. So the cost of that is $5,000. The software support line, that includes the majority of the services that are shared among departments, such as OpenGov, Munis, the email licenses, the website software. We do expect, looking at updating our website, that the cost, the annual maintenance will be reduced, but we are not quite there on the decision yet. Telephone service is going down because of the audit that was done. The system operations, that is our contract with the Board of Ed, where they provide the staffing to support us. We pay a percentage of, we pay all of one employee's salary and benefits, and then we pay a percentage of a number of others. And then just some equipment to allow them to replace certain things easily. So there's a couple big things in there, but we think it's necessary to keep moving forward. There is capital associated with this budget.
Are you looking at that? What was the telecommunications drop?
The drop was
The audit?
23. Some of the drop you see here, that's the main, but some of the other drops you see in the various departments, where
Okay.
they're wireless,
Got it.
where we maybe reduce lines. Are you shipping over, Kathy?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I could learn how to use a trackpad.
You know, I skipped, well, I cut my own IT.
You're
I
looking
think
for
we have a
capital,
problem
Kate?
in capital. 'Cause I showed 0 here, but then 10.
I probably caught that
Okay.
already.
Okay. Yeah, IT desktop replacement. Oh. Did I not give any use it?
You probably didn't reprint it.
I probably didn't reprint it, okay. All right, so, I'm sorry, I missed before in IT, I had 10,000, or in capital for my own budget, had $10,000 in the budget for ADA compliance to start going through the building and look at areas where we are not compliant with ADA and try to become compliant. You know, some of it will be simple things, signage, some will be moving things around. We have $60,000 in there as the ongoing cost for the revaluation, and then $37,000 for desktop replacements. And that is a regular ongoing replacement plan.
With regard to the ADA, is that the figure for discovering what compliance issues exist and fixing them, or just?
So discovering them, we have an employee who is well-versed in ADA, and then from the planning department, and then our facility supervisor, they're my little subcommittee to go through, and there's a lot of documentation out there that will help you to know what you have to do. And some of it we might not be required by law to do because we're not renovating the building, but if there are things that we could do that make sense and would make the building more accessible to people, we want to do it. So that's the money to do things. Like some of the signage, I can tell you, just looking at the door outside every office, there's the numbers, they're raised. The height that they're at is not appropriate. And they're mostly just raised numbers. So we should, lower those, put everything in Braille as well as, the raised numbers. So things like that.
Is this more just a general effort to sharpen that up, or is it more driven by, say, a town employee, contractor, or even citizen that stopped by and says,
No,
I'm having a
it's
little
just,
trouble
it's
with
just
this?
that we should do this. It's, we actually, this room is one of the things we need to do, and we have money from
We've
ARPA
talked
money
about
to
this for
do
years.
this. Yes,
Right.
yeah. But it's to make the building more accessible. You know, we've done a lot, putting the ramp in the front so that the building is accessible from both ends now. But there are other things to recognize that some people have different abilities and, you know, without vision or with, you know, if they have mobility issues, this building is not set up to be kind to them. So we need to do something about that. Okay. Anyway, the $37,000 in capital for IT replaces about a quarter of our desktops. Okay.
Just, but before we leave IT, as we look at these numbers, and you know, in 19, 20, 2021, it was just going up $1,000. Now these jumps are becoming a little bit greater from year to year. Is that what the expectation will be, you know, going forward in this industry, if you will?
Well, you know, we've always seen the software support costs go up at higher than normal inflation. You know, there are definitely jumps in here that we're asking for this year, things for the first time. The money for consultants, I don't expect to be an ongoing cost, but when it comes to the software, yeah, I think we're going to keep seeing this year after year. Next, we have Registrar of Voters. We'll go to the voter registry first. So this is more their daily activities. So this is where we see the wages for the employees, the regular employees. We did have some turnover in that office, in the, which is why you see a slight decrease. And this is a budget where we definitely move things around from being in like conferences and meetings to travel. We moved items from one line item to another. But overall, this is one of our biggest mailing and shipping for, wasn't able to get quite an accurate answer in this. Some of these items might belong to the actual voting instead of voter registry, like the expenses to ship and insure the tabulator memory cards. Whether that's pre or post election, we still haven't sorted that quite out yet. Mailing up because of the canvassing. And this one
Does
is,
this budget reflect the early voting that's being implemented?
this one would not. The other part of it,
The elections,
Elections is in there, okay.
but I don't think it's got the
I
projected
don't think-
expenses for
so-
the early voting
Yeah,
preposition.
they didn't seem like they knew about it.
No, I think they
Was
just
not
were
being
informed.
put in
It
there.
hasn't passed through the,
and we don't really know
passed yet.
what the actual requirements are going to be.
right.
Okay.
So, yeah, so what this budget reflects, I made an adjustment to the request for the seasonal and temporary salary because the original request was higher than even a presidential election year. So I went back to a general election year to see, you know, what general elections have cost us in the past, which is where the seasonal and temporary salary line comes from. But things like professional services, it's costing us a lot more to handle the maintenance of the machines and the tabulators because we, I think in part due to the having the, what do you call it? All the extra ballots we have to have because we have the weird little changes up in District 1.
Kate, on the registry, the canvassing increase, is that, you know, we're always trying to look to see what's due to the developments and new people. Is that something? Just more people in town?
Because there's more people moving into town. I don't know that that's exactly part of it. They did not say that. The mailing notification, that, sorry. Yes, they're saying that the canvas mailing is increased due to the new residents in town.
So that's part of the 90% increase.
Well, that line, yes,
Okay.
sorry. That's part of the 90% increase. Just going to go back to the election side of it. They're increasing travel costs, assuming that the moderators in all will have to do more traveling. Professional services about the tabulators, printing, that has to do with the ballots, and this is all just assuming the one election. So if we had primaries, you'd have to assume more costs, but we don't budget for unknowns. But there are some hefty increases being requested here. It was a little bit difficult. We have a lot of new personnel down there, and the budget was one of the last ones in. So we didn't have a lot of chance to go through everything with them. Town clerk.
And this was the crazy budget, you really had to cut a lot, is that right? Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't know, I'm sorry. Didn't know you were right there. I mean, I just,
Office supplies are crazy.
He wouldn't have said anything if you weren't.
yeah, right, exactly.
I know. Yeah, no.
Yeah. I actually have to go back and now I see, all right. I don't even, what number did I sign that? It was 13. Yeah, okay. So the printing is, let's see. Travel, overtime all down, conferences up a little bit, but I believe those are a good thing, getting our people off to meetings and getting them trained. Printing, we moved,
Put it under office.
Move the office supply, the office
Right,
supplies.
yeah, I see it.
yes, moved it to office
Yeah.
supplies, thank you. It's been a while, so some of these I don't remember. Microfilming, I took a little bit of reduction there just based on past history. We'll see, I could be wrong. But otherwise, there's really not significant changes in this budget overall. There is revenue associated with it. And this is one of those where, I think you have to be careful in, not, it's a big revenue number, and if we miss it, that's a big miss. The bulk of it, the 1.8, is, most of that is gonna be your conveyance taxes, so when we're having, an active real estate market, that number's gonna be up. So we're estimating for it to stay actually pretty level.
So this is somewhat conservative then? what you're saying?
Yeah.
Good.
I don't, like I said, if you miss, it's a big number to miss.
Yep.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Beautification. I'm going to get into the community environment. Beautification asked for a little bit of an increase this year, and actually didn't have too much of a problem with it. You know, they do the hanging baskets, but they've also taken over planting here at Town Hall, maintaining it. They weed, maintain, and mulch the slopes, and they do the berm at the train station. In certain areas here, they're doing organic treatment of the grass because we have the pollinator pathway. And then they've asked for another $1,500 for some new planting projects. Yeah.
Where does the cemetery groundskeeping go?
That is not them. We'll get there.
Monuments and ceremonies.
It's the monuments.
Oh, got it, okay.
So the cemetery actually has a couple places, a couple homes.
Right.
So who are they next?
Yeah, they fall under.
Celebrations,
within the
right.
celebrations.
Okay, so celebrations. Under celebrations, program expenses and facility repair and maintenance, this is where, that is that's the flags, I think, or the monuments, sorry.
Yeah.
Cemetery maintenance, they asked for 20. I cut it. I thought that was a big increase from 5. And I just thought we couldn't sustain that level of increase. So $10,000 to maintain some of the cemeteries. I do think it's a worthy
I think so too.
thing. Public Works also does some out of their budget. They do some of the
I know
maintenance.
we do transfers at the Board of Selectmen sometimes, I just was curious.
Yeah.
Kate, wasn't there a big jump there too because they found the headstone and we need to bring the headstone back and refurbish it? I thought that's what part of the.
I know nothing about that.
Yeah, I thought that was a big part of the extra 15.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll look into that.
let's look into that one.
Yeah.
It seemed like a lot of money to move a headstone, but we were contacted about a headstone in, I want to say Milton. Somebody found a headstone that belongs to Darien, and to bring it back requires some
How did
funding.
that happen?
Don't know.
Who moves a
Like to
headstone?
hear that story, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I will look into that. Okay. Okay, so,
Kate,
yes.
under the community and environment, under celebrations and community grants, we need to change the name of the Historical Society. It's not the Historical Society.
Yes, the museum
Museum
now,
of Darien.
yeah.
Museum
What
of
is it?
Darien. Museum of Darien.
The Holiday Lights Grant, the chamber did not ask for money. They in fact sent us an email saying that they didn't need it this year.
And surprisingly, it was because the garland came in
Less expensive.
less expensive. So, I read that twice. We don't see that too often.
The museum asked for 20, but again, I just felt we couldn't justify that level of increase. Depot did ask for a small increase of $1,500. I did support that. We haven't had an increase there in quite some time. Kids in Crisis asked for to go from $1,500 to $5,000. Again, I didn't feel we could justify that large percentage increase, so I had cut that.
Okay, can we go to that one, Kate? Because when I read their proposal, it was based on an increase in the number of residents in Darien they're serving. So I didn't back it into exactly how much that works, but they did justify it by they're helping more people. So I think we should just take another look at
And
that.
are they helping with the mental
Yes.
health task force at all?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
see them as a worthy cause.
Yeah, and they're
Yeah,
also
they're very active.
Yeah, and they're also looking at helping the school. So
They're a really good organization, and they have
Okay.
been helping the schools with what happened last year also. I know.
Well, that's, if you guys want to put that back,
I would support it, but I don't know what that affects in the budget.
Well, it's 3,000,
3,500.
3,500. That's not going to move the needle much at all.
Understood.
Add them all up and, starts moving the needle, but,
Understood.
on an individual basis, that one, it's not a big,
So Kate, what should we come back to? We're keeping a list, right? And we'll
Yep.
come back to
it's keeping
the
us.
changes.
Yeah.
Can I see what the Historical Society grant request was?
It's in the first
Yeah.
page
Is
here.
it
I'll
is
show
in the
you.
first page?
Here,
Oh, well, I can't do it. I was going to pull it up,
I'll take a look. I'll read it separately. It's fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
under proposal details, there's
Okay.
museum Commentarian request.
Okay.
and just, the original,
I've asked them to come before us with financials and information. I don't know that we've seen.
and I don't recall if I'll have to go through my emails and see,
I'd like to understand what this is as a percentage of their budget.
Yeah, let's take a look at that.
yeah, I'll have to go through and see if I got all that, if I
we've
just
asked
got the
them that
letter.
before.
Yeah, they had audited
Yeah, I didn't see
statements.
that in that.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
They
definitely
didn't
not
get that.
attached,
Yeah,
and
they
I
didn't
don't
get that
recall if I
level.
got it and just didn't attach it. Okay. Is that everybody in
They
there?
do good work.
Yes.
Okay, Harbor Master. I'm gonna skip over plan and go to Harbor Master since we're right there. New Harbor Master, perhaps a new take on things, we're moving the money around. But he's asked for more money for operating supplies and, let's see, I have to go back and see his actual request. It's mostly buoy maintenance.
Right.
And buoy maintenance,
What
yes.
is buoy maintenance, do we know?
Is it repainting?
I
New
think
ones?
sometimes it's resetting them, sometimes it's buying new ones.
Okay.
Yeah, they have for some of these cables, there's actually a company that specializes
Yes,
in
that goes out and
particular
has to
thing.
reset them and all, yeah.
All that, and I'm assuming that's all part
Yeah.
of this. So that's very specialized
Yeah.
work that they have to do.
Okay, I'm gonna move to planning. Where are your steps?
Planning and zoning.
Okay, I'm in planning and zoning. And, okay, overall, not, pretty stable. Eliminating the seasonal and temporary help we used to get. The wages are all, current employees, unions, bless you. Mostly union employees. Slight uptick in conferences and meetings, reducing clerical services. That's one that can bounce up and down with them depending on the nature of,
Was there, that seems like a big
what?
jump
You ended
down.
up with a negative number.
I ended up with a negative number.
Yeah, did you only mean to go down 10 and not 31?
I think I meant to go down 31, or 31. I
You got an
meant to go
extra
down to
one on that?
18,000. So, can you, yeah. It was supposed to be $18,000 and I hit too many,
Decimals?
too many ones, I think. There goes all that good cutting I did of $40 at a time.
No, you just put it, I know, yeah.
Yeah.
18,000.
But that was based on historical, okay. Slight uptick in dues and professional licenses just based on the various memberships that Jeremy's staff belongs to. Otherwise, a pretty stable budget. Also under Jeremy's responsibility area.
Wait, Kate,
Yep.
going back there to revenues,
Oh, yep, sorry. Yes, he is planning to increase. Have they given you new numbers on that?
Yes, he added them in here.
Yeah. So they were increasing their fees.
so that 19%, it includes the increase of 10% plus just volume?
Yes.
Okay. When, do you know, Jen, when he's planning on going before the RTM for that?
I think we had talked about March or April.
So it should be in place before the budget. Okay. Let's switch over to the building department. We are still trying to fill the fourth fourth building inspector position. We had attempted to fill it earlier this year and didn't have any luck. There was a recent class of inspectors who were licensed in December, so we will be going back out with that again soon, hoping to fill that position. We do not expect to need the seasonal and temporary next year, so we eliminated that. Small overtime budget. Conferences, that's so that they get all their inspection, or all their training. The building inspectors have to have training on a regular basis. Here's an area where you see some of the reduction in the telecommunications from the audit. And otherwise here, not a large increase in the budget. There is a capital request. Yep, go ahead.
I can't see the capital budget.
It's not in this one, it's in a different,
I can't see
you
them.
can't zoom at all?
When I click on budgets, it just keeps bringing me back to the,
Oh, okay, so when you click on budgets, see the,
So you gotta click on the 3 horizontal lines, and it will give you
Thank you.
all the ones you have access to.
I did the same thing.
I did too.
I'm like, oh, I know I've seen that before. Why?
It is a little subtle, right?
You know,
But
we
the-
do some of these things so that you keep us around.
But the,
Before we go, yeah, go ahead.
okay, sorry.
Before we go there, let's just pop into their revenues. You know, this is done based on an average over how many years
I think they do a 3-year average.
for the estimate? That's obviously a big number.
Mhm.
We're not anticipating any increases there in any, you know, fees or anything.
So no 10% increase there?
No.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, we're not increasing the fees, but this is also probably, you know, you could say this is a leading indicator.
Mhm.
So this would come before all the other fees
Okay.
increase from construction stuff.
Okay.
This was one where, you know, over the past few years with the different developments going on, trying to get this number right has been hard, because you don't know when they're actually going to come to get their, you know, their permits. So I think they've done their best to estimate when the different big developments would come in. And I think you'll see next year this start to go back down to a more normal, sustainable level.
Got it.
There is a request for two things related to land use. One is from the Planning Division for Stormwater Management Manual Update, which we need to do in response to the MS4 requirements. We will update the manual. After that, they will update the regulations. That's a $50,000 request. And then a request for a new vehicle for the building inspectors for $35,000. And one thing we might do with this one is to look into an electric vehicle. Because it might be the right place for us to start. These vehicles would only go around town. So we'll start evaluating the feasibility.
We'd also need to look into the cost of putting a charging station.
So
Yeah.
I asked Ed about that. And we had, what comes first, the chicken or the egg
Right,
kind of
yeah.
discussion. He felt that it would be a lot easier if we made a decision to go into electronic vehicle for him to put in the station. That rather than get the station first, that if we decide he didn't feel it
No,
was
of
going to be
course, I just am
difficult.
curious what the cost would be.
Not much.
$6,000, I think.
And there's a lot of grant money out there for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, then you've got the issues like, well, do we make it exclusively for town use? If we put it here at the town
That's the
hall,
question.
could you make it available for the public to charge for a fee and make some, recoup some of the cost? So,
Okay.
but we might look at doing that. Okay. All right, I'm going to move to human services. Regular expenses first. And there's not much of an increase here, just some wage increases. We moved the conferences and meetings to training services to more accurately reflect what they are. I took out some of the printing because that was, I think, the senior resource directory, which we haven't updated in years, I took that out. And reduction in office supplies based on what they typically spend. The other part of that budget is the outside assistance. This is pretty stable. Where it's been, there's no increase requested. The blight assistance is one of those just in case lines. I decided to leave it because if we do have somebody come in that needs the assistance, we want to be able to provide something. A lot of times what this has been is dumpsters for people who need to clear out, a hoarding situation. Haven't spent any of it this year, but I will say Ally is very good with all this money and using the multiple resources available to her, hitting the town last in a lot of cases.
I think Ally is incredible with what she's done and for helping our residents. My question is, do we have enough money in for the heating oil? Because I know with the increases between electricity and heating oil.
Yes.
That's not ours. That's not something that we budget. Those are grants provided by other agencies.
But she can go back and ask for more.
Yeah.
Oh, got it.
So we're good.
Yeah. Moving to the senior center. Yours is moving faster than mine. There we go. We are experiencing some turnover here, but we didn't budget any kind of, Lord, it's still loading online. We didn't budget a change based on where we thought a new hire might come in. Eliminated overtime Dues, we took one thing out that I had spoken to Beth about. Certification for the training, mental health training. We're doing that in-house now, so we didn't need to do that. And her program expenses going up as, things are starting to get back to pre-COVID levels. Facility repair and maintenance, we are anticipating some repairs on our equipment as they are getting older. So that's why there's an uptick there. And the uniforms, this was a big increase, but we have to change out the towels. There was a notes.
New provider, because the other one went up.
Okay, thank you. New provider.
You got fired?
They had a fire.
They had a fire, so now they're out of business.
Right.
And the new provider charges more.
Thank you. And let's see. And so you see the food cost up a little bit because that people are starting to come back. We're doing more and more lunches.
Okay, where are we on the program director for Beth?
We only just put the full-time. That only just got posted recently. And I took a look at where we were paying the person leaving compared to where we might bring the new person in at. And I felt it was, pretty, it'd probably be stable.
Okay.
I didn't want to, I didn't feel it was high enough that we could really budget a change.
Okay.
I mean, I do like to do that when you'll see
Yeah.
in some departments, like when we put a new thing in, we'll see this tomorrow. The police department is one where we'll have some, well, we already know we had one person who is retiring Wednesday. I guess that's tomorrow is really his retirement. So we've already built that in. So we built in a rollover, basically account, kind of like the Board of Ed does, knowing that we'll have some changeover. But I didn't feel we could do it here.
Okay, so all the 13% and the cleaning and all of that, this is all, do we have a problem here? Or is this all kind of typical?
It's typical, and one of the things that's happening there is our equipment is aging and needing repair. So Beth she's making an assumption of 10 hours per appliance for service, but we have some things like the grease trap that has to be cleaned out on a regular basis. We have the doormats, which have to be cleaned on a regular basis, but the benefit is it stops a lot of the crap from coming in, so it helps us maintain the quality of the floors. They shut down in the summer and do a major clean for a week, so we have that cost. But the ovens have to be serviced, the refrigerator, and then we have the solid waste, the hauling. There's a dumpster out back for them, and there's a cost to haul that away. So there's a lot of equipment with having a kitchen. We've got youth services.
Well, do you want to run to senior center revenue?
Oh, sure. I don't know that there's anything significant. Did we put the fee in yet? We have talked to Beth about putting in a non-resident fee.
We did not.
What we were talking about was a $25 fee for
Right.
non-residents.
We've been talking about that for a while.
Right. So we're looking to implement it for July 1.
I think that's lovely.
And she,
How does she feel about that?
fine.
Good.
And she actually estimates that the majority of them will be happy to pay it.
I can see.
Yeah.
It's a lovely facility. She has a lot.
Yeah.
So Kate, on the revenue side, so on the food program, are we operating on a break even?
No,
We're not.
no.
No.
Well, it depends on what you want to consider in the costs. We don't cover the cost of the chef through the revenue, and I'm not sure that we even cover, I'd have to go back to look at the food. But there's also the, all the paper goods because we
Had to. for
had to,
COVID.
yeah. So no, it's not a moneymaker.
But not even break even.
Not at this point, no.
But super appreciated by our residents, for sure.
Mhm.
They really are. The town employees do a few things down there at the holidays, and it is amazing how appreciative the seniors are.
Yeah. Okay, skipping down to youth. And youth is one area where we're seeing increases because we're anticipating being back at the pre-pandemic levels. So you'll see that an increase in the seasonal and temporary salaries related to that. Travel is camp directors. And then the program expenses, the increases there, bringing programs back to previous levels, but also just increases in some of the costs of the programs. But along with that are increases in revenues. So you see our revenue estimates going from 244 to 287. So significant increase on that side. And then the last one we had planned for tonight is the health department. So this is an area where we are dealing with the growth in town. And the budget had proposed, how to put it, currently we're staffed with a health director, a full-time registered sanitarian, and then some share an office administrator with human services, and then there's a part-time public health nurse and a part-time sanitarian. So the proposal was to add an assistant health director and keep the full-time registered sanitarian. So it was moving money around in that position. I did not feel that we were ready for the assistant health director, but I do think we need the two. We're going to need the two full-time sanitarians. The reason we need more sanitarian hours is because of the increase in restaurants and salons. So you're going to have different estimates from different people on how many new restaurants and how many new salons we're going to have. But the reality is we're looking at least like 14 to 15 new food establishments and a couple of new salons. Those all require inspections. Even a restaurant going out, new one coming in, requires plan review inspections. So I have budgeted that part-time to full-time to become effective January 1. And it's just part of the, with all these new developments, we're getting new responsibilities, and we have to manage that. We are looking at more mileage costs. We do have a couple of cars assigned to that department, but rather than rather than adding in more cars. I did assume that some of the use would be on cars that already do belong to the department, so try to manage that. Medical services, this is our, it's lab fees, and it is the courier service for transport of some of the animals. Then we have a professional services line for the medical advisor. We did change medical advisors, and then professional also includes their credit card fees, which they didn't have in the past. Software and maintenance up a little bit. You see the telecom coming down again, that's the audit. There is revenue associated with this department, but David has looked at our fees and, let me see. We're still, I guess you would say competitive with other areas. Food licenses, there is an increase in the number of places, which is why we're looking at an increase in fees. So it's not an increase in our rate, it's an increase in the number of food establishments. And same thing with salons. If you have the tolerance for a little bit more, yeah.
Monica, did you have a question? Okay.
No, I just want to make sure everybody's good on the, you know, the increase in the, from the part-time to full-time.
I think clearly necessary, given all the growth we're seeing.
We don't have contingency or debt service on the schedule. Did you want to go over those?
Contingency, there's not really much to go over.
Right, yeah.
You know,
I just said-
debt service, yeah, it's not on the schedule. We can cover that at any time. I was gonna, if you want to do that tonight, I have no problem.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing just refresh me on what your Board of Finance contingency proposal will be, and there was efforts
Well-
before to kind of reduce that. I can't quite remember where that's ended up.
It was at 250
Yeah.
last year, and that's where, it's hard when you look at it, it looks like there's nothing there, but I propose bringing it back to 250.
Okay.
Years past it had been much higher.
400.
Yeah. And the employee's salary set aside, that includes the non-reps. Right now, it still has the police settlement in there, and it also has an estimate for a settlement with the Darien Public Works Union, which will begin contract negotiations with them soon. So, as you know, I don't like to tell you what percentage we're estimating, because we don't want to, we'll want to keep that quiet for negotiations. The debt service is kind of what it is. The highlights there are that in the town debt service, when we look at the interest expense, I have no idea what comes up. He's got it up there. That assumes the issuance for Great Island happens, and that happens at the full amount that we were authorized for. It also assumes some other, and another issue, smaller number for some various projects. And then if you go over to the school, there's an assumption of interest for the HHR projects, the first tranche. That one will be for sure in several issues. Everything else, and that's the only new ones, right, Jen?
Right.
Yeah, everything else is what we have already incurred. So there are no options there.
And Jen, are you anticipating any refinancing in the next fiscal year?
No, not at this time. Rates are higher than they have been since we took advantage of the low rates and did a lot of refundings.
Okay.
So I don't think there's much opportunity at the moment. We continue to keep an eye on it, but we're not anticipating anything.
Right.
Anything to reduce tomorrow night's schedule? Rebecca?
Yeah, sure.
Tomorrow night's gonna be long.
Tomorrow's gonna be long. So,
Yep.
I told you about employee, the employee benefits. So here's where we are. Probably, the biggest number there, like I said, you might not have been here yet, Sarah. Medical insurance, the preliminary indication we had on our medical insurance renewal was 20%. And just so you know, I mean, we go through and we budget, we know what we've got, and so we know where everybody goes and what their union required premium shares is. So we go through and, the number's very accurate from our point. So where we stand today, when we saw those numbers, we said to our agents, we need to put this out to bid. So we are in the process of doing that. The indications that we have right now are that the rates, we will be able to renew with somebody at a lower rate. How much lower, is unsure right now. I've seen some indications, but we still have a couple more carriers to come in with their prices.
Somewhere under 20% is what you're.
Somewhere under 20%. And I don't know that it'll be when you guys, I don't know if it'll be by next week when you guys are ready to vote on the budget. But at least by the time the Board of Finance is voting, we should be able to reduce that.
It's a lot of money.
Pardon?
That's a really significant increase.
Yeah, and one of our problems is we're a small group.
Yeah.
And, it's like throwing a rock in a puddle versus throwing a rock in an ocean. We have changes and it's huge. And we've had some bad experience. So it's going to happen. And it's painful. But we are doing what we can to mitigate it.
12% is like the national average. To go from 12 to 20 is huge.
Yeah, but,
It's
previous years,
experience-driven.
the last couple of
Yeah.
years, though, we hadn't even been, were we even last year? Or flat?
Or the year, either last
We
year
actually
or
had
the
a
year
decrease
before.
one year, and then we were flat.
Okay.
So.
We've been lucky the past few
We've been
years,
lucky,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Most other stuff is relatively flat, but here, crudely redemption, like I said, we are anticipating a rather senior employee retiring in the next fiscal year. And we know we're pretty close on what that person's payout would be. Plus, we also, as part of the police contract, we agreed to the conversion of the sick time to a 457 contribution, so that is anticipated in this number.
Ouch.
There had been discussion at some point about accruing this expense, over the life of the employee, or making it part of regular payroll, or something like that, where there would be an anticipation of a retirement like that. Has there been further thought to that? I mean, these types of sort of one-off,
So-
sort of big retirement things that we've dealt with that for years.
We've talked about, like, that would require us to put some money into a reserve, and I know we've talked to the auditors about, I never found a way that we could legitimately do that.
That you could reasonably project that. And
We can project a lot of them. Every year as part of the audit, we have to calculate what we would have to pay out to people if we were to cease business on June 30th. What do we have to pay out?
It's a calculated amount.
It's a calculated amount. It's in your audit reports. So we know, assuming that there were no major changes during the year, but to actually accrue it and set up a fund to pay it is a little bit of a different story.
just that there's lumpiness with all this.
There is absolutely lumpiness, but, one of the other things that happens is, depending on where the change occurs, we might have a period of time with no one in a position. So we use the funds from that vacancy to help pay for the the terminal payouts. But this one, we've been given good indications, and we know that they have a large payout. The other thing I would say is that the number of people who will qualify for these payouts is getting smaller. The vacation doesn't go away, but the number of people who would qualify for a payout based on their accrued sick leave is getting smaller and smaller every year. As people retire, not everybody's eligible for it. The pension contributions have all remained pretty stable. Life insurance, we're looking at some increases, but again, that's another one that we've put out to bid, so that may change. And then risk management. We've been pretty stable with our rates. We do see some growth, but there's also growth in the values of the buildings or equipment. So you see some changes in there, and this basically goes off of what we see in the current years. Crime. Was there a reason for the big increase in crime? The cyber liability
Yeah,
cost. Cyber liability
going
increased
up crazy.
dramatically. And we actually had to do a little negotiating this year too, because they wanted the, what do you call it, how you have to get a code sent to your phone to be able to log in.
Dual factor.
Dual factor, yeah, identification. They wanted that on like everything. So we had to do a little searching to find a way to make that work.
Is the fact that you're going to provide this anti-hacking and anti-phishing training, is that something they take into account and reduce your?
They'll take it into account, but it's the dual factor
That really what they want.
that is what they really want, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Kate, I have a question back on employee benefits.
Yeah.
Did we, I see that we did spend some funds on tuition, but it looks like the employee education tuition, we're eliminating that?
This is just non-reps,
Yes.
and so I believe that
Well,
person is,
it's any non-police.
any non-police, okay, so we don't have anybody,
Eligible?
well, asking for it at this, right now.
The two that we're receiving it will complete their degrees this semester.
Got it. Okay.
So it's
Thanks.
possible, but you don't know.
Pardon?
It's
It's
possible,
possible,
yeah.
but haven't heard anything from
Got it.
anybody.
I have a question on contingency when you have a second.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We have no numbers under the past years.
Yeah. Because you never actually spend money out of contingency.
Okay,
You transfer it to someplace else, and that's where you spend it.
okay, but haven't we budgeted certain amounts over
Right, but
past
what you're
years?
seeing in past years is just the expenditures, not the, so you'll see if you look at the revised budget, you see a column, you see that number, but you wouldn't see
Yeah.
anything for spending, because we never actually spend it. It's
Okay.
always transferred someplace else.
Okay,
You're not the first person to ask that. It's a little bit difficult to, because it does look like, oh my God, you've increased that budget when you never spent anything.
no,
out
no,
there.
I just feel like there's been years before where we've put money in the budget towards
You
that.
absolutely put money in the budget.
Right, should we
but
not
then-
reflect that though?
But you can't, because those are just showing what we spent.
So it's only actuals, not proposed?
We don't, in this.
I thought we had proposed.
You have proposed
In the year.
in the current year. So you would see the fiscal '23 numbers,
Uh-huh.
which is 250?
And it's down to 246.
240, okay. But you wouldn't, like in fiscal '21, all we show now is what we actually spent.
Okay,
and because we didn't spend it out of that account.
Okay.
I mean, we could go back historically and work out for
I
you
was
what we.
just curious, yeah.
Yeah, the reason it's a problem is that if you put the money into that account and you say, okay, I want to reflect the expenditure there, well, fine, you spend it out of that.
But then you don't know that you really spent it.
That money then
Right.
has to be
Yeah.
transferred to another account where they have to show it as revenue, right? Which then offsets an expense or a negative expense.
Yeah.
Which then offsets an expense. And so it's actually just much easier to transfer it directly out because then you have the amount that is being expended recorded in that department.
We could go back and tell you what the,
I just don't remember what we have put aside in the past few years.
it's been about 250.
Has it been less at all?
No.
I don't think so. It was more at one point. I remember when it was around 400.
So do I.
But we can, we can go back through old budget books and,
I was curious.
Now, that's the mechanical reason why you can't do
Yeah.
it that
Yeah,
way.
no, I understand.
But if you looked at the particular account and you would see that it was budgeted $100,000 and it actually was spent 120, you
Mhm.
know that
You know
20 came from
one of the contingencies.
one of the contingencies.
In all likelihood,
And do we know-
it could come from another account, but, we can go back and see like where it was transferred to. And just also, some of the ways that we've used it have changed. Maybe 15 years ago, they would hit contingency, in August and September for any little things that went over. And we changed that way of thinking and at some point said, and this is when I was in finance, to departments, you have to look in your own budget first for a transfer. And we only used contingency like for the really big things and at the end of the year for the cleanup. But we could go back and, look where it's been used, where it was going.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to see if I can do a quick report on it, but.
I think you have to go into
Right.
Munis to do it.
That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate you looking.
It also provides an appropriated reserve when you have to come in and cover something
That's
quickly.
Oh, I know.
Mhm.
I know we have a contingency. I just was curious what we kind of have putting aside. But I remember when it was 400 and
Yeah.
we brought it down.
Yep.
Kate, do you want to do library?
Nope.
No? Okay.
So I don't have
They
information
like to
regarding the
come to
library.
I emailed it this morning.
Oh,
all of you.
did you? I didn't
Yeah.
see it this morning.
Yeah, received it this morning from them,
Got it.
and they will be here
They want to come.
Tomorrow.
Yes,
Okay, so we have it in our email.
Yeah.
Got it, thanks.
yeah.
So there
Haven't
aren't
had a
any
chance.
others that we could do tonight?
The Parks and Rec, Public Works, and Police have asked them all to come
Right,
tomorrow night,
right.
so
Yeah.
no.
Okay.
And then the fire department, I don't know that they're planning to come, but I wouldn't do that. I'd leave them for Wednesday night.
Okay.
And then risk management, that is,
Risk management is
We did it.
that's our town liability and
Okay.
public officials liability.
okay.
That'll
That'll reduce tomorrow night.
Hmm?
I'm just barking off like
Yes.
tomorrow night.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
okay.
I know in the past we've asked questions of anyone out in the audience, so do we need to do that?
You mean you let them ask questions?
Yeah.
That's up to Monica.
I think that well, does anyone have any questions? Audience?
No? Okay.
No? Okay,
Just curious.
okay. Okay, we're good, Kate?
I'm good.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kate. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jen.
Yeah.
It's a tremendous amount of work.
Mhm.
Really helpful.
Kate,
Yes.
I really can't see the capital budget, if you can help me.
So we'll call this meeting, we'll adjourn. Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Right, click on that.